You got your mama's sunshine, you got your daddy's rain. You're like a piece of heaven in a hurricane.
Hey there, welcome to this week's podcast. I'm Josh Vietti. I'm here with my dad, Pastor Ron Vietti, and here with my best friend in the whole wide world, Vince and Sierra. We just got done doing a little Spartan race on Saturday, and well, I mean, Vince did really well. I finished it. I finished.
You did good.
I'm happy about that, but very sore. So if you hear us screaming, it's because our calves have locked up. Anyway, so we're going to talk to you guys today about how much our words matter, how much last week we talked about what is worth fighting for.
And I want to go there again today, probably in the last half.
Okay, cool. And so really we want to this year's going to be interesting, okay? Yes. We are in a politically charged year with the election coming up. We are in the middle of so many court battles. It is almost impossible to figure out, what's going on in our society. There's so much going on, and so we're going to talk today about, what is our responsibility in this chaotic mess that we're living in this society we're in. There's so many things that could harm us, right? There's so many things that could go wrong, but I've talked to so many people that are getting caught up in worrying about those things so much that it's robbing them of their day-to-day life. It's robbing them of living the life that God has called them to live.
Right.
And so today we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how we can react to those things. And you had an interesting story that you pulled up, Dad. And so you want to start with that?
Yeah, I was going through Newsfeed, and some of you might have already seen this, but U.S. Supreme Court prepares to hear landmark social media cases. And it goes on to say the Texas law signed in 2021 by Governor Greg Abbott makes it illegal for any large social media platform to block, ban, remove, deplatform, deboost, restrict, deny equal access or visibility to, or otherwise discriminate against expression. And the first thing that I started thinking about, I got so angry and frustrated when we went through our COVID years. And there were doctors, that one group of doctors that came out and said, hey, we have what we think is the solution to COVID. And doggone, they took them off the internet. These private internet social media sites said we remove them. And it came down to the fact that these private social media sites were saying, unless we agree with your political platform, unless we agree with this, we're taking you off. As soon as you get an article on there, we will remove it. And I didn't like that. I thought as American citizens, we had the right to hear what these doctors were saying.
Well, when private companies become so big and so powerful that they are able to influence the entire world, okay, or not just the United States, but the entire world with decisions that they make is scary. However, it is a private company. And so we live in America where you can do whatever you want with your private. I think my opinion is, because I'm nervous about states taking too much control because, when a state that, we agree with politically takes control, we're like, yes. But when a state that we don't agree with politically takes control, we're like, no, please, So I think what needs to happen is we need to start understanding what these companies are. And we need to start understanding what their intentions are. Because, yes, they've given us the ability to communicate. They've given us the ability to share ideas, pictures, all these really cool things. But at the same time, they do have an agenda, and they are trying to steer it, and they're going to continue to try to steer it, and they are. I mean, that's what it's going to be. And so, as consumers, and I said this years ago, Vince and I we jumped into the social media game quick and early, learning about what their motives were behind the companies they're building, and we learned right away that they're using your information, they're using our data, and we knew this 15 years ago, right? 10 years ago, whatever it was. But you have to understand that you are responsible for everything that you put out there, right? You are personally.
Well, there's a whole thing, because like the internet, because it came so fast, right? Like so TV, fast. One of the things with TV, you think about TV, a lot of things that are said on TV is actually governed. Like you can
Regulated.
Right? Like there's certain things you can and can't say on TV. There's certain subjects you can talk about. There's only so much gore, and then there's a rating system. If you show this much blood or there's this many curse words, it's considered this and that. So this system comes from regulations that have been put in place to protect people, right? And so your news, stories that we hear have all been funneled through this regulation. The internet kind of burst that wide open where people could just go online, create a website, and say whatever they wanted to say. The problem is, like you said, like TV was, and you probably remember this, Pastor, when people watched like the moon landings, like everybody in the whole world was glued to the TV. It was like this information source where you could be like, wow, like I'm watching this with everybody in the world. Well, now like you can put one thought out on the internet and everybody can hear that one thought instantly.
Well, they say they're saving us from lies, but who determines if it's a lie or not?
Now they want to come back and get some control over it because let's just be honest, like with the internet, there is a lot of misinformation. 100%.
Most of it is.
Sure.
But don't we have a right to even hear that misinformation
I love Dana White,
and make up our own mind?
Dana White was on a podcast. And
Elon Musk seems to think so.
Yes, Dana White was on a podcast and he was saying, somebody asked him, hey, UFC is taking a lot of heat lately because you keep your guys on a short leash and you let them talk about controversial subjects. For example, their beliefs in God and homosexuality, all these different things. And he said, I want to stop you there. Short leash? He said, I don't keep anybody on a leash. Like, our people have the right to say what they want to say. It's freedom of speech. They should be able to say what they want to say. And so I think there is that side of it with the internet and like where we're at in social. It's like when people come out, like if you want to come out and say, like COVID's a great example of it. Dr. Rhonda Patrick talks about in the beginning, she was on the wrong side of COVID. She was saying that, when she first came out and COVID launched, she was saying, oh yeah, if you got a shot, it's healthy. It's good for you. Then she realized it was her information was the misinformation, and what people were saying about the shot and how it can enlarge your heart and all this stuff was actually the right information. And so the problem is I do think people should be able to share what they want to share, but there needs to be some kind of I don't want to say filter, but there needs to be also a way to protect people from doing something stupid.
This is redundant, but I really feel that I had a product that kept you from getting COVID in a serious, you didn't have severe complications of COVID if you used the product I was pushing. And it proved out to be true with about 20 or 30 of our employees and friends. And it proved to be true with me twice when I had COVID. And I mean, this product, it works, and it's worked before with all kinds of viruses. But all of a sudden, if you went on the internet and said, hey, I have this product, they would remove your post immediately. I even went into some of the big box stores, and they said, no, the government has told us to remove that product from the shelf.
Yeah.
Because in their opinion, it didn't work. That was only their opinion. We tested it, and although it was a very small sample of 30 people, it worked in every one of their cases.
Well, that's the problem. I think that, the internet was supposed to be this grand scheme of being able to share all of your ideas, and we were hoping that the best and the most truthful and the most useful ideas would just kind of float to the top, but that's not really what has happened. What has happened is, and this is a problem in the scientific community as well, all the way through. So in the scientific community, you have people that companies, large companies like pharmaceutical companies, that will pour money into studies, and then those studies will be published in academic journals, and then all of a sudden that's the truth. But the truth behind it is that a company is paying all this money to give you the results that they want,
and they're lying to us.
Yeah, I mean, it's
and
based
why do
on,
they allow those lies?
It's based on money, and that's the issue. And so, like, I think if anything, we could talk about this and get really frustrated. But I think if anything, as Christians, this has brought us to a point where we need to be in prayer more often.
What happens, Josh, on a Sunday? We don't have the freedom to share certain things.
Yeah.
Or certain social media sites will remove us.
Well,
they'll just take our program right
and that's
off.
the problem. It's like there's a narrative, and I don't want to go so deep into this, but we definitely get sold narratives, and if the narrative fits what we're being sold, then it's okay, and if it's not, then it's not. you can go and say, and I'm saying this, you guys aren't saying this, so I'm sharing my opinion now. You could say that there was money to be made from all these pharmaceutical companies that were selling a COVID shot. So buying alternative medicines such as silver or, certain, like B vitamins and all these things would take away from the cells of these pharmaceutical companies. Right. And, I think you can't share one side of a truth without sharing the other side of the truth. Where, yes, did the COVID shot save lives? Sure, it did. There's older people that were immune compromised that needed the COVID. Well,
some people would say.
I know, but I'm just saying, was there immune compromised people that needed it?
Right.
Probably. So I'm not going to say no to that.
We don't know, yeah.
But I'm also going to say that there's also the other side of it where if you were taking vitamin C and D3 and silver and all these different things, there's also a benefit. So to say that there's no benefit over here and it's all benefit here, that's not.
And it's somebody's opinion. I really believe with all of my heart that if some people would have listened to what we were pushing, some people wouldn't have died of COVID. Of course, the products I was talking about, you have to take them right at the outset of COVID or they probably don't work. But anyway, neither here nor there. I don't want to get COVID back in the discussion. I just think that there needs to be some laws changed. Let me ask you a question. In the country we live in today, do we have freedom of speech?
No. Yeah, absolutely not.
Yeah, I would also.
It's on the law books. It's in the law books, but no.
I think you're allowed to say what they're okay with you saying.
Man. And who's making the rules? Who's making the rules?
Right. It's regulated.
Institutions.
Right.
Each institution has their own rules.
But why are some things that we find very disturbing allowed to be spoken about on college campuses, and even the people that are in charge of these campuses defend those rights?
Right.
But in other situations, they come against them and go, you can't talk about that.
Well, I want to bring this up because I've just been really deep in this, and it's not because I'm an advocate for one or the other, vice versa, but I started looking, we're definitely in one of the things that we kind of have that other countries don't deal with for the most part is gun control. Gun control is a big subject right now because we see on the news constantly in social media that guns are being misused. Okay, for people are acting out violently with guns.
If there were no guns, then there would be no access to the guns to shoot people.
So if you actually look at the numbers for guns and violent, so guns in general, like if you take about just gun deaths in America and you take the number, it's pretty high. It's like in 47,000. Don't quote me on that, but it's somewhere in there.
It's high, sure.
It's pretty high. But if you take gun deaths and you separate them, and I'm gonna make a point with this, I promise. If you separate them from violent acts, it's a lot less. It's like in the 22 to 30 something thousand. This was for 2023 stats. Okay.
For violent acts?
For violent acts. Okay. Now, violent acts aren't considered suicide.
The rest would be accidents.
No, there's self-inflicting, which would be suicide. Okay, and that number is quite high. It's alarming. That number, and we should be worried about that number, by the way, as the church, the suicide one. Okay, and then there's accidental deaths. Okay. Now, if you translate that back into one of the things we don't talk about, outlawing, is alcohol.
Right.
The number of the number of DUIs, cause of deaths in America, is quite alarming high. It's like in the 20,000s.
Yeah.
Then if you take self-inflicted from drinking diseases from alcohol, that number skyrockets way past
people dying of disease.
Okay, right. And then if you take accidental, which somebody accidentally overdoses on alcohol or whatever, they consume too much. But the problem is we don't talk about that. We don't talk about ever taking alcohols off our shelf.
Why though, Vince? Why? I'll tell you why. Because the people making these laws, they enjoy drinking, but they don't enjoy shooting guns. That's what they'll do.
And you can also say there's a bigger narrative to take control out of people's hands, because if you take guns, and this goes back to and people will get so upset with this, but the reason why that amendment was written for us to be able to, because at that time tyranny was happening and the British were coming in and trying to take over people's freedom. And so it gave them a way to.
It's not like there's a police department.
And I'm not. And listen, I know people say, "Well, that's crazy. You think the government's going to try to take your freedom away?" I don't know, but I do know that I do have the right to protect myself. Now, do I think everybody should have a gun? No, of course not. I agree with you, Pastor. There should be stricter background checks and back laws, but put the same amount of effort into gun control as you do in alcohol.
Right.
You should have rehabilitation programs for people that are addicted. You should have programs for people that know and understand what alcohol can do to you. Show pictures. We always show these bloody scenes of all these things. Show pictures of people's lives being wrecked by alcoholism. Show this.
What people don't realize about the gun control issue is what people on the side of they want guns to be banned completely. On that side, what they don't realize is when there's a mass shooting, it's not like we're fighting just to keep our guns because we love our guns.
That is not
it's the reaction we have to our only defense against that crazy act is a gun.
Right.
And that's why we're like, we need to be armed to protect our families because they're armed. So look, here's the deal. You get every gun off the street. You can guarantee me you get every gun off the street. I'll even give up hunting. I'll give up my guns.
I agree. I do agree with you. I agree with what you're saying, and people aren't going to like that opinion about.
They won't.
Let me say that.
But
if you could figure out how to get them all off, I'm with you.
I'm with you too.
But
yes.
But don't take that same energy and put it into, like, it's a very political selling point right now. It's Republicans versus, you know, no, talk about something that is having way more impact on people's lives. And I'm not saying, yes, I do actually agree with a lot of the gun restrictions we have in California, the background checks, waiting 10 days, all those things. I don't think those are bad. Does it stink? Yes. But put as much energy on other things that are killing people too. Don't just
let's go back to suicide.
Goes back to money.
Come on, suicide. You can take guns away, but somebody who's really intent on committing suicide, they'll find another way to do it.
Yeah.
They'll do it without guns.
Right.
And so
they'll do it with alcohol. It happens all the time. People
in Japan, I don't know what their gun laws are in Japan, but I'm assuming they don't have a lot of guns in Japan. There's a lot of suicide. They just do it in different ways.
But again, some of the people that are pushing the gun control, and I sometimes the NRA makes some decisions, and I go, I don't know if I agree with those or not.
Right.
You know, I think you could allow that to happen, but the NRA, what they're thinking is if you give these people an inch, they're going to take a mile. So if you start letting them have these little things, they're going to take bigger, 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 bigger. Again, some of these people, not all, but some of the people behind what I believe is an effort to get rid of guns, period.
It's a control issue.
But Josh, those people, a lot of them, they have armed guards with guns protecting them. And they live, I've said it before, they live in gated areas in the higher, influential areas. And they don't have the threats that the rest of us have living down here.
You know what I find?
Some people in the ghetto.
You know what I find amusing, and it happens on both sides of the aisle. Each side thinks that there's this really well organized effort on the other side, then they're all together and they're going to join up and take over everything. When the truth is, there's people all over the map. Like the liberals they're not completely unified, right? And the conservatives are not completely unified. And the truth is that, there are people on the hardcore left side that some of them believe that the conservatives all have this plan of getting our guns and going and taking over America one day.
Sure.
And that's ridiculous. That's not the case at all. We like to hunt. We have guns for that purpose mostly, but also to protect my family.
Well, we all come from different backgrounds. Some of these people, again, are naive. They haven't lived in the world that I live in. They haven't lived in the neighborhoods I live in.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not going to stand and watch somebody rape my daughters because they have a gun and I don't.
Right.
And I'm sorry. And again, that won't be something that a lot of people like to hear. But I do believe that you should be allowed to have guns for your own protection and guns for hunting, on and on. Do I believe that you need assault rifles with those large capacity
magazines?
No, I don't.
You got to look at our entire culture. Our entire culture is a violent culture. I mean, our movies, our TV shows, our books. I mean, we are violent. Our America was built around violence, and that's not good. It's not good, but that's the truth. And so people, when they look at the gun issue, they need to look at a much deeper and bigger issue, and that's the fact that people are very violent in the streets in America,
Right.
And you said there's extreme thoughts on both sides of the fence. But in your own opinion, do you think there are some way out on the left that wants to take guns away, period?
Yeah.
They want them gone.
Yeah, some. Yeah, absolutely.
And so if they can't get...
Not all, though.
If they can't... No, not all. But if some people, the real radical left, or whoever we want to describe them as...
Right.
I think their thoughts are, okay, if we can't get rid of your guns, we'll get rid of the ammo, make
Right.
it so expensive you can't,
Well,
own it. Or they're trying to pass a law right now where every year in California, correct me if I don't have this right,
Okay.
but they're going to make you pay a tax on every gun you own, register
Right.
every gun,
Yeah.
and that's going to become a pain in the tail. Really, it is.
And again,
Yeah, it's
this
wild.
is not and I know they tax alcohol, by the way. It's taxed really, really high, and people, and same with cigarettes, the same thing. And there is a new tax on guns right now too. If you want that just passed, that is one of the things in California. There is an extra 10% tax when you buy an ammo or firearm. That's not here nor there. The issue that I have with it is, and when we talk about freedom of speech in general, is that that we are being sold. Again, this goes back to like we talked about code. We're being sold one thing over here, and they're not talking about anything other. No, there's no real facts.
Why?
If you get truthful about the facts,
Right.
then
But you know why.
Then you can get deleted.
You know why.
Yeah, or canceled, I should say.
You know why.
Why?
Why they don't talk about alcohol?
Why?
Because it's a multi-billion-dollar business.
Of course.
It's money. That's
Right.
it. I mean, guns, there's money involved in guns as well, but
Right.
not as much, not nearly as much as there is in alcohol.
Well, and I would say that, and again, and I'm not for any of this. I agree with you, Pastor, what you said about the NRA. I don't stand with the NRA on a bunch of stuff. But people would say that NRA is a politically driven thing, and if you can cancel them, then you lose. So to me, it starts going down to like, what is the truth in these things? And what are we not being told?
The bad guys have guns, and they'll always have guns. You're not going to take their guns away.
In
so
America,
if you take
yeah,
the good citizens' guns away, then only the bad guys will have them. But what would happen in some of these mass shootings if there were more people with CCWs who was armed at the moment that those things happened? I think it would stop a lot of them.
And I would hope that those people would be well trained and they would know what to do.
Well, if you have a CCW in California, you are well trained.
You should be, yeah. There's these men who jumped on top of these kids, in Kansas City.
Yeah,
heroes, man. I mean,
Heroes.
that was a really cool thing to see. What's funny is on both sides of the aisle, they fight. We fight. But at the end of the day, we both want peace.
Right.
We both want.
We want the same
We
thing.
want the exact same thing. We want our kids to be able to play outside.
Yes.
We want our kids to grow up safe and not afraid. And we want them to be able to go to school and not worry about, like, what parent wants to worry about this stuff?
Are we going to become like Israel? We've had, 5 or 6 trips to Israel. And when you see elementary schools out and about doing their little things like visiting different places, what do? They have a couple armed guys with ARs
Yeah.
guarding the kids. Are we going to become like that in America?
I don't know.
Are we going to have to?
Yeah, I don't know. I hope not. I hope that we can get the violence thing figured out. I really do.
I just think we're going about it the wrong way. We
Yeah.
really are.
Well, that's the problem is...
Let more CCWs be given out to people that are responsible. And again, now I will say this. I'm not so sure that CCWs should be handed out as easily as they are in some cases.
Right.
There should be maybe a little more work done on looking at the history of that individual. I even think they should be able, or not be able to, let me stop. I think that the people who are offering the CCW licenses should even have 3 or 4 people that know the individuals very well
Yeah.
send in some kind of reason why they think they should have a gun or
that's
shouldn't
good
have a gun.
references.
Well, here's
that's good. I
a
like
good
that.
argument. Here's a good argument. If a criminal has an illegal weapon, okay, and they get caught in a crime with this weapon, they'll probably be out of jail like within weeks at this point in California. I mean, I don't know that for sure.
Depending
but
on the nature of the crime.
depends on what it is.
Yeah, of course, right.
But the penalties are pretty low. I mean, compared to what they could be, and I don't know. I don't see why people are they should be fighting against that. Now, there are a lot of people that are just, unfortunately mentally ill, like majorly mentally ill, and they have had red flags. They've been in therapy. They talked about violence. There's all kinds of a paper trail where, a lot of these kids they have people that know what's going on. That there should be these, I'm not saying red flag laws because that gets really dangerous. And I don't, but I'm saying that like there needs to be a way for people to speak up and to protect these kids as well.
Well, you and I were raised around guns.
Yeah.
I mean, we hunted a lot. By the time you were 12, I think you had 5 guns, and you were very safe with those guns.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I think,
And I
again,
still am.
a lot of it has to do with the way people were raised. And I don't know how we got off in this discussion on
Well, I
gun
was
laws
talking.
today,
It was
but,
my so it was my fault because I was talking about freedom of speech, and the whole point, like I said, my whole point is that we're being told what to think and believe. Like a lot of, you didn't have these talks about guns. Obviously, you didn't have Columbine, thing.
Right.
I would go, but now it's constantly, and so and I'm passionate about this for a lot of reasons. But one, I want all people, whether if there was a way to say, hey, we're not going to have any more guns, and if we do this one thing, it'll work. I would be with it.
Yeah.
But what I'm not happy of seeing is seeing a actor or somebody go online and they're selling their tequila and they have a brand, and then the next thing they're on social media and they're saying gun control, and I'm like, you're literally you're worried about saving lives over here, but you can care less if people are addicted to alcohol. How many people are in AA meetings today? They lost marriages, they lost kids, they lost loved ones because of their abuse with alcohol.
And this is a good transition. Is I think that in our society today, there's a lot of hypocrisy on both sides of the aisle. People say one thing and then they say another and they don't match up. Know what you're saying. Know what you're thinking. Think it through.
Yeah.
Know where you stand.
Yeah.
And speak the truth.
Right.
And learn to speak the truth and listen to the truth. I mean, that's what we want. That's what we need in this country. More than anything else is we need to have honest conversations and say, hey, this is the truth. This is what's really happening. Right? And the alcohol thing, is it really good? I mean, DUIs in this country are terrible. I mean, they really are.
Yeah.
And if we can have conversations on how to mitigate that. And I mean, I wish people would just read the stories, the tragedies that happen.
We just had somebody in our own congregation. We had a Christmas parade, this unfortunate event where somebody had a DUI, and I'm not bringing shame or guilt on anybody that's gone, but one of our people in our congregation got hit by a drunk driver at a Christmas parade. And that's tough, and so it's like, again, we're being sold a certain thing, and that's the thing with social media is they're going to write one narrative one way, and then you won't hear the other side of another narrative.
Well, that's what's happening now. It's already happening.
Right.
They're giving you one side of certain issues.
Right.
Well, there's another thing too that we're not talking about, and this is a bigger issue that is connected with guns, but it's connected with violence in general. Is the media is setting up this anger culture to where it's in social media too, but the media sets up this anger culture where you should hate that person. That person's against you. That person doesn't like you. That person is a terrible person. So it says, like in that Kansas City shooting, they said that there was a disagreement, some sort of words were spoken, and then it turned into violence.
Wow.
How angry are these kids? That first of all, they're carrying weapons, and second of all, they one altercation, and they're pulling guns out and just firing those guns. Like that, there was something that happened. There's something happened with those kids,
right?
And our culture and our society should take that seriously and look at the anger behind what's happening.
Well, John,
why are these kids so angry?
Why aren't we equally attacking violent video games?
Yeah.
They should be outlawed, totally.
Right.
There's a certain amount of violence. They should be outlawed, and no one can buy them under any condition.
Right. I know. Remember Duck Hunt? Man.
Yeah, Duck Hunt was classic.
That was a
I was
good
thinking
one.
track and field the other day.
I haven't seen some of the violent games
Video
out
games?
today, but the little I have seen on
Pretty realistic.
It's pretty bad.
I mean, like take Grand Theft Auto, and this is good for parents. And I know we got to transition out of this, but it's called Grand Theft Auto, and in that game, you literally can go buy a prostitute, sleep with that prostitute, jump in a car, shoot the guy, hijack his car, and you get points and bonuses for this.
Yeah. It's all violence based.
And this is
terrible.
a game that we're okay with.
And you know what? And you know what people don't realize? Maybe you don't even realize this. Netflix just now is offering that game. Netflix is offering video games now on Netflix, and that game is on there.
Yeah. So, I'm not, listen, you can go in so many rabbit holes with this. I'm just saying, with the freedom of speech thing, these are things we don't talk about.
Yeah.
These are things I would say, like you said, with the anger issue, the suicide issue, there's mental health involved too.
Yeah.
And we should be spending a lot, like if candidates came out and said, we're going to attack, I would say a lot of our homeless issues for people have to do with mental health. It's like, why don't we talk about attacking that?
And when we talk about mental health, I mean, a lot of people think, of people being in an institution and having to have drugs and all these things. No.
Right.
I mean, if there is a basic understanding of how to teach your children how to be healthy mentally and how to be healthy spiritually as well, right? if you could just teach your kids how to talk, how to speak to people, and how not to get angry, and how not to take things personal, and how not to internalize things. If you could have this basic, understanding, and that requires work. It takes.
Let's go back to the violent video games. Do these not have the capability of searing your kid's conscience?
Yeah, I think so.
As they see this and are exposed to this so much, then when it comes to really killing people and shooting them, say, I've already been doing it for video games for 10 years.
Yeah.
And it has to have some kind of effect.
Well, simulations are used in the military, right? And so obviously it's a real thing.
Yeah, there's a direct correlation, they say, usually. I won't say every case, but you can even go back to Columbine. They said, back that these people would play these first-person shooters, and that would translate over. And so, of course, I mean,
so we pick and choose what we're going to pick on.
Of course, and
we pick and choose what we're going to be against and what we're going to be for, and a lot of it depends on the way we were raised and our habits and what we enjoy.
Yeah. Again, I think the anger is such a huge issue in this country. I really do. I mean, you look online on social media. If there's anything we've learned, it's that when we all communicate to each other, certain people that are in powerful positions influence the hate. I really do.
Well, and how many of these violent shooters are raised by just bad parents? People with no parenting skills at all.
And I would say unaware parents too, Pastor. Yeah. Like, I think there's a lot of parents that are just...
Isn't that a bad parent?
Sure. What has happened in our culture, like it or not, we have been set up to have our parents so busy that they've been raised by video games. And let me say this, when I say so busy, and I'm not giving parents an off-the-hook excuse, but in order to survive now, both parents usually have to be working. They both probably have a side hustle, and they're just constantly moving. And so sometimes it's like they're so wrapped up on the day-to-day that they're like, go ahead and go watch Netflix. I mean, we just submitted. Hannah was telling Josh the other day, our daughter was watching Netflix, and we're like, oh yeah, she has her own channel. We have a parent guide, and we let her watch some shows, and she found a show that she wasn't supposed to watch, and Hannah walked in the room, and she's like, what is this? Like, what are you watching? And we had to reel back, and Hannah's like, I just want to, she told you, she wanted to burn the TV or whatever. She's like, Hannah took it to the extreme, which was good. But so I think sometimes you get so busy that you're not paying attention, and parents just need to take a step back and pay attention a little bit more.
Yeah, the church needs to put more energy into teaching parents how to be good parents too.
Yes.
Yeah, and spend time with their kids. And I say from the pulpit quite often, you've heard me, you need to know where your kids are 24/7. You need to know who they're hanging out with, on and on. I did see in a case the other day, they held the parents responsible for the shooting death. Did you see that?
Yeah.
The young man who went on the shooting spree, and I think they charged the parents. They found them guilty.
Right.
Because they gave him the gun.
Right.
They didn't lock the gun up. They knew he had mental problems. And I think there needs to be more of that.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah, it's just incredibly sad all the way around.
Right, but again, I would say culturally we have a problem. We have allowed ourselves to want more. We're in this time period. We consume more than anybody. We want everything. We want the TV and the iPhone, and we want the house, and we want the car, and we want all this stuff.
Right.
Well, that means you get busier. That means you have to work more, and you are sacrificing something at that level.
You know,
and I'm not saying that stuff's bad. I'm just saying that's what we've been set up for.
There's something really interesting happening on social media right now that I found very interesting. There are people that are they're Christians, and they're saying that the Crusades were a good thing. And they're defending the Crusades.
Oh, man.
And they're saying that, like, these people were true Christians because they actually fought and they killed other people for Christ. And I'm like, what is this? This is such a crazy, like, depiction of what Christianity.
That's just a fine line of becoming a terrorist.
Well, that's what's happening. What's happening online is people are fighting each other so much, and they're just trying to find a badge to put on and for their team, and their team is Christian, and the other team is this or that, and it's becoming the enemy is involved in this
100%
in media and social media, and so, gosh, man, I'm trying. My wife and I are talking about this a lot right now about how much exposure we want our kids to have, and and I think that we're way far on the conservative side, like you guys are. Like, I don't want my kids on TV a lot. I don't want them on social media a lot. Well, they're not on social media, but I don't want they're little. But I don't want them on Netflix. I don't want them on YouTube. But there are a couple things that are good. We're just being really militant about what they're watching right now, and so. But it's also in how we talk to each other. It's also the
100%
example that we're giving them on the day-to-day basis, right? I'm not sitting around, like, if I have a political thing to talk about and I'm kind of upset about it and I want to talk to Ashley about it, I don't do it in front of my kids.
Of course
I
not.
don't.
Right.
Well, that's of course not, but how many people do? How many people have these political conversations and this person's bad and that person's terrible and we don't like them and all this stuff in front of your kids, and then they're going to grow up to have hate, and then they're going to do hateful things. That's what's going to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, that's good.
Start from childhood. And I was going to say something else, and it just went right through my mind.
And parents are gonna make mistakes for sure. I think correcting the mistake immediately is where you need. And again, that comes to paying attention.
Go ahead. When was the last time that we had a parenting class at the church?
Is this turning into a staff meeting? I think it is.
Yeah, I think that's the way it's going.
No, that's good.
I was just thinking right now.
You're right.
Occasionally at a marriage retreat, we'll talk about parenting, godly parenting. But I think in the next couple of months, we need to have a parenting class.
I agree with you.
You're very passionate about, and oh my goodness, I think we have a meeting this week. I just remembered that with the Christian school here in town. But
I'm glad you remember.
I forgot.
I know, I did too. It's in a couple of days. So we're passionate about having good education for our kids, but you're right, man. Most of it happens in the home anyway. So we should put more resources into
that's good.
Giving. I think we assume people are doing this on their own, but we can't assume that.
Well, they always say it takes a village, and it really does.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
and even putting emphasis on a Big Brother program again or something similar. I mean, again, a lot of these problems revolve around kids raising themselves.
Well, we're getting involved
we're
getting involved in the foster care sector, and there's a lot of these kids. It's funny. I'm doing a social work program right now in school, and at first I was like, I don't want to work with kids because it's going to be too hard emotionally. Like, I don't want to deal with some of the stuff that. But now I'm realizing that that's where the work is, man. It's really with the young people.
Yeah,
and if we want our society to and I hope it gets better, but if we want it to be a safe place in the future, we're going to have to focus on the children.
Partnered with, I forgot the name of the group, a foster care program. And what was it, 2 months ago, they had in the back people signing up to be like big brothers and big sisters to these foster kids. Yeah. And I think we had 2 pages of
There
sign-ups.
are a lot of ways to get involved. If you just Google, volunteer, for youth, for this and that. And of course, you'll have to be vetted. You'll have to go through their process of live stream and all, or not live stream. I keep calling it live stream, live scan.
Yeah.
You have to do all that. But it's worth going through that little bit of process to have an impact on a kid. Of course, you can always volunteer at your church youth group. You can always volunteer in your kids' ministry. People think it's just about babysitting, but no, it's about having a lasting impact in some of these kids' lives.
100%.
And so we'd encourage you to do that. If you can pass the live scan.
And if you're a parent, I would encourage you, in your local church where you're at. Unite might not be in Bakersfield at Valley Bible Fellowship. But be involved with your kids with their youth group. Find out what's going on, because I think that's huge. And have a partnership with your youth pastor.
Yep.
Youth pastors need your partnership. They need it, just like we want your partnership and your feedback in this podcast. Yeah. Having a partnership with your youth pastor in your local church is so huge. Like, if you don't have that, then they don't sometimes know how to minister.
There's
to
a
your
place
kid.
in LA called Homeboy. I think it's called Homeboy Ministries.
Yep.
And there's a priest who he got tired of just talking about it, and he opened up a bakery. And they have all different businesses where these ex gang members come in and they work at this place. It gives them purpose, and they change their whole lives are changed. So cool. And there are places like that you can volunteer. Yep.
Well, I'm going to change the subject here, and we're going to go to a whole different subject. I was looking through some old sermon notes today, and I came across some notes that I had written out probably 4 or 5 years ago. Some of you in our church will remember me addressing this. But Dr. Masaru Emoto did this water experiment. And Emoto found that water exposed to positive words and intentions formed beautiful, symmetrical, crystalline structures while the water was frozen. while water exposed to negative words and intentions formed disorganized, asymmetrical structures. And I want to kind of change the topic to this right now, because in my battle with 2 cancers, I have felt several times that God was telling me to listen to worship music, and not just worship music. I think I could extend this further than that, but to listen to worship music for an hour or 2 a day. I've never done it yet. And while I felt God was speaking that to my heart, I had another influential person tell me that they felt God said the same thing to them. If Dr. Emoto, if he was right, which I'm sure he was, that when we are around negative words, negative influences, we're around bad language, maybe even bad music, all of this stuff, that it actually affects the body, the physical body. And so I want to kind of start a conversation on that right now. Again, he said when people listen to pleasant music, when they were around pleasant thoughts, on and on and on, that their body formed these real organized, symmetrical forms when the water was frozen. And then he showed pictures of the ugly, ugly crystals that your body formed when you were around people yelling and you're in an environment where everybody was cussing or yelling or saying bad things and on and on and on. So I'm just wondering how deep we can take that thought that maybe we need to promote in our homes a more positive atmosphere, which you've already been talking about. But is it true that along with the biology of belief, the other book I've been quoting a lot, that our subconscious mind and what's happening in our inner spirit is actually affecting our physical health? It's affecting our genes. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to kind of open the conversation on that right now. Maybe we'll finish with this. Maybe we'll get on to the subject of what's worth fighting for, or maybe we'll come back next week. I don't know. We're all over the place right now, but hopefully you'll hear something.
So
in this conversation.
I've been preaching this idea of pre-gaming for a while now, and you guys have heard me talk about it on the podcast. And where I got this idea was we used to play football in high school, and the guys would put their Walkmans on back when you'd have like CD players, Walkmans, and they'd be listening to their music. And what they're doing is they're getting their mind right for the game, right? And kind of did something similar with this old race we had. I was getting my mind right for it, and that's every time we speak at church or we do something big, we get our mind right, In the morning, many times we spend time in prayer and we spend time with God and we get our mind right. I think that pre-gaming is so important. I think that having some sort of a routine where you're constantly kind of realigning yourself with your purpose, realigning yourself with in our case the God who created you, right? And saying one of the prayers that I pray really often is I say, God, help me to be the man you created me to be. Help me to be the person you created me to be, right? Which to me is all about aligning. It's all about getting underneath God's umbrella. It's all about getting underneath God's, authority and saying, hey, I'm with you. You're with me. Let's do this, and that does everything for me. It changes me. I feel like it changes me physically. I feel like it gives me more strength. It gives me more energy. It gives me more clarity. And when I don't do that and I just let everything go, the chaos just kind of happens, doesn't it?
When you're being stressed out, what are some of the things practical things you use to start relieving that stress? Now, for example, me, I like music, and I'm not just, saying that it has to be Christian music or whatever. I can have days where I'm kind of stressing out and I'll be driving across towns and I love the oldies, 60s music. And when I turn that on and listen to a few of those songs, it seems like I can just feel my stress melting.
Do you have a favorite? Do you have a song that you just like, if you hear this one song?
The Turtles, Herman's Hermits, the Beach Boys, some of the Beatles stuff. I mean, I could go on and on and on. Honestly, I mean, it changes everything.
100%.
I'm wondering if we would be more healthy in a physical way even, if we had good music playing around us all the time, if we refuse to argue with people going, this is bad vibes right now, I'm not even going there. I don't want to expose my physical body to this. I think he's on to something.
My
I really
big
do.
thing is I really want to be informed. I want to know what's going on in the world. And so I do listen to podcasts and I do listen to radio shows and watch TV, news and stuff. And it's a lot of it is so negative. And so I get enough to know what's going on. And then I've been really trying to just turn it off, even if I don't want to. I'm like driving down the road. And the other day I was driving and I was thinking, okay, I need to turn this off and I need to pray. And it's like sometimes the thought of that is enough for us. I mean, we think it is, right? We think like, oh, I thought about it. I thought about the good intention. So that's fine. God knows my heart. Okay, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. No, I think there's a big difference between having a good intended thought and actually turning the radio off and actually like verbally speaking to God out loud.
Turn the radio off. Today and yesterday, I'm driving across town. I'm putting some oldies on because I'm going through quite a bit of stressful stuff right now. And again, I've said it, and it's redundant, but some of the Christian music out there just doesn't do it for me. And so I turn on the oldies, and I start thinking about when I first met my wife and I first held her hand, and all the stress starts melting. But then again, the last couple of days, I've been so busy, I haven't been able to turn on the radio, and I start praying, man, and just when I pray, the same thing happens. All the stress starts just dissolving.
Yeah.
When I start pouring out my heart to God. And going back to this experiment, up to 60% of the human adult body is water. And if this is true about these crystals being formed, depending on what you're exposing yourself to, I really believe that there might be a possibility that we could really, not heal our bodies, but we could really help them heal by putting ourselves in an environment of meditation, of good music, hanging out with pleasant people. That could be healing to our physical bodies.
One of the things I've been I was dealing with was because I've been trying to like struggle with like losing weight, and one of the things they say when you're stressed all the time, that you carry high cortisol, and so I was taking it really serious because I would like at night I really couldn't I would get into these moments where I would let like work and stuff that I have to do the next day kind of like carry into my night, and then I wouldn't sleep well because of that. Does that make sense? Like I'd go to bed thinking about what I have to do, and then I'd fall asleep, and then I'd wake up and think, I didn't really sleep that well, and the first thing on my mind is the thing that I have to do that day.
Right.
And so I started watching comedies again at night, funny movies, like something funny. And that has helped so much, dude. Like I've gone back to like yours is like oldies. For me, I can put in like an old Happy Gilmore,
Yeah,
like,
puts yourself in a good spot.
And I'm just like, and I just start cracking myself up over the dumbest things, and then I'm like, what? And I go to bed, and it's peaceful, and it's been really healing for me.
The guy that said that he healed himself through renting funny movies, and I think now they're debating that whole idea.
It 100% worked for me. Yeah,
I think it works for me too. The other day, Debbie and I were stressing on something. And all of a sudden, I don't know what happened, but we were laughing till tears ran out of our eyes.
So fun.
And I said, Debbie, my stress just started melting. Just started melting. And that has a lot to do with the people you hang around with.
Yeah.
Some people can really, really stress you out. Others, man, they're stress busters.
Yeah.
Because they're laughing. They look at everything in a positive way.
Yeah.
And I think we can even get biblical verses right now that really, lends to this idea.
Sure.
It's funny. You think about Jesus and the disciples, and they were all mostly young men, very young men. Teenagers, they were young, and Vince and I have both been to Hume Lake and camps where we've been the leader over these teenagers,
right?
And they goof off, they cut up, and they have their wild thing. You think about the story where Jesus walks up to some of the disciples, and they're arguing about who's the best, who's the greatest, And there had to be a point where he's like, "Come on, guys, like what is going on here? Like what's happening?" And I think it's moments like that kind of in our lives, they help us to understand what's really important and what's not,
Josh, what if we just go back to the Bible?
Corrected is what I mean.
Just go back to the Bible. 1 Thessalonians 5:16-18. Rejoice always. It says always. Pray without ceasing. Okay, the rejoicing is going to relieve stress. Pray without ceasing. Give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you. And then Philippians 4:8, finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things. And then again, one last one, Ephesians 4:29, let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such as good for building up as it fits the occasion. If we would just go back to Scripture, we'd be much more healthy, much more happy, and much more peaceful.
Yeah.
If we just try to read these verses, say, Lord, doggone, I'm going to try to commit myself to this today.
Another thing that I've learned, and I've spoken this before, but focus on really truly understanding that there are many things that we can stress about that there's nothing you can do about right now.
Oh, yeah.
And when you have an understanding of what you can do nothing about,
Yeah.
and you have an understanding that you don't need to worry about that right now.
Mm-hmm.
You can set it aside. You know, maybe it is a future worry, but write it down, whatever. But don't worry about what you can't control.
Right.
I think if we learn to do that, that will kill 90% of your stress right there.
Yeah.
I agree. You know what?
I'm hung on the thought of you're saying the disciples hanging out.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, could you imagine when Jesus was healing the blind guy that he had to use spit in there? He just and they're all sitting there and he's like, "What did he just do?"
Yeah, someone had to be laughing.
Yeah, someone was laughing. Somebody in the crowd's like, "No way, this is gonna work." What did he just do?
Well, there's something called the 85% rule, and I don't even know if it's true, but it says it turns out that 85% of what subjects worried about never happen. And with the 15% that did happen, 79% of subjects discovered either they could handle the difficulty better than expected, or the difficulty taught them an important lesson worth learning.
Have you ever been in
Crazy.
a conversation with somebody, they're so stressed about a decision that they think you need to make right now, but you realize you don't need to make that decision right now?
Right.
It's like if you, I have this like purposeful procrastination that I do where sometimes I'll just say like, no, I don't need to make that decision today. I just don't. And so maybe it'll work itself out. And many times it does.
Right.
If it's an issue, you know, but we stress so much. It's like, oh, we have to do something about it right now.
We do.
And it's based on fear. And so the other side of that equation of knowing what you can't control and not worrying about it, the other side of that is knowing what you can control.
Yes.
And focusing on that.
Yeah.
And doing what you can. And usually it's a small, simple thing.
The question I'm leaving here with today for myself, how can I promote more of these better crystals forming in my life?
Right.
What kind of environment can I put myself in? And so music, prayer, venting, being around positive people, all of that is really, really important. And you know, today we have not even got to our subject matter.
Yeah, I would say even, I mean, I know this goes with it, but even like a healthy church service, you know?
Right.
Yesterday, we were blessed to have Pastor Russell with us from the Vegas church, and it was so cool hearing these stories and people engage with it. And we not only did we started with great worship, people were able to surrender and reflect, and then we got this word that was great. And so all of that stuff, I mean, is just huge. And just, you know, like you said, forming those powerful crystals. I know we'll go into this Wednesday, guys. We're doing this Wednesday series with Pastor Ron, and he's going to give us these nuggets of truth, and we'll have a time of worship. And that stuff, I mean, going into your Thursday, I mean, just releasing the stuff that you need to release and going into your Thursday is so healthy for you.
Well, the Bible is the blueprint. It tells us everything we need to know, and it addresses these subjects. And if we would just obey it, we would find ourselves much more healthy, body, soul, and spirit.
Yeah, and don't take things seriously if you don't have to.
You know what? I take myself too seriously. I've got to learn to laugh at myself a little more. So,
Me too.
That's all for today. We never even did get to the second part of things worth fighting for. But you know what? These podcasts are going a little different direction now because, you know, we're kind of running low on subjects. And so I told the guys today, I always... not always. I try to read the news stories in the morning sometimes because I like to keep up with what's going on in the world. And a lot of those are just interesting topics to start discussing.
Yeah,
So,
again, I think there's a balance there, you know.
but you haven't done it yet. I haven't heard too many. A few of you have. Let's give you credit. But if you want to send us in subjects you'd like to hear about, we're open. But until then, we're just going to start talking in the morning. We might not even know where it ends up at.
Yeah.
We're just going to get on these microphones and start talking.
I think that's fair.
So thank you for all the compliments out there. We love you guys. Anything you want to end with?
Episode 70. That's what it is.
Wow.
there we are.
70.
Yep.
So, okay, we love you guys. And we really would like to hear from you.
All right, see you guys.
God bless.